Ladies, gentlemen, and Horadrim of all ages, 'tis the season to delve deeply, and if you want to reach your true potential and become as powerful as possible in Season 9, you will need to take advantage of the seasonal power-up system, which for this season is all based around Horadric Spellcraft and Horadric Jewels. That said, for the most part, where the final balance around this system and the way that it has landed, players are going to be using these powers for the way that they can boost our player damage and boost our more standard builds, rather than building fully around the powers themselves as we could have in previous seasons. That said, regardless of how you choose to play and how you want to use these new seasonal mechanics, your build will need them in some capacity. So today let's break down the actual quickest and most effective ways to get them unlocked and get them either upgraded in the case of powers or crafted in the case of the Horadric Jewels. And it all comes back to the new seasonal activities of Season 9, which are actually going to be a permanent part of the game moving forwards: Escalating Nightmare Dungeons and Horadric Strongrooms. So we'll go over that whole barrel of monkeys as well. And to be perfectly clear, for those who don't know, Horadric Strongrooms and Escalating Nightmares as activities, as well as the new Nightmare Dungeon affixes that we got as well, are all going to be on the Eternal Realm and will all continue forward to future seasons too. It is a permanent shift to the game. This is just how Nightmare Dungeons work now. However, the Horadric spells and the jewels are seasonal only, and we will talk about how all of that intertwines. That said, let's start out with a brief overview of the activities themselves. Horadric Strongrooms are available quite early on in your seasonal adventure. You can find them in any Nightmare dungeon, including within each separate dungeon of an Escalating Nightmare as well. If you enter an area within a dungeon that has a Horadric Strongroom pillar, it will be marked on your map very notably, and you will have effects on your screen leading you to it. Click on the pillar and you will spawn in a couple of waves of enemies. Defeat the enemies and a portal will be created. Enter the portal, click on the pillar in the new room to spawn some more waves of enemies, and then you'll get a number of pillars with choices you must pick between. In lower difficulties, you only get to choose 1 or 2. In Torment and above, you have to pick 3 pillars. Generally speaking, the pillars that I lean towards myself are any of the ones that say that they spawn extra ambushes from pillars or from shrines, as that's just more monster density and more attunement to generate as a result that does not change the way that the gameplay functions in general. Or also the pillars that give you an item that you can hold on your back to increase your attunement gain percentage, but it gets dropped if you use a potion or if you evade. And if that doesn't conflict with your build, that's something that you have full control over and can use to gain attunement much quicker. Generally speaking though, as long as you have a relatively quick build, you should be able to max out the attunement bar on every time that you do this activity. That said, after you pick your pillars, you gain access to the main chamber. And here you have 100 seconds, which is a minute and 40 seconds, and your goal is to gather as much Horadric attunement as possible. The main source of attunement is from defeating monsters, with more attunement from larger monsters, but you can adjust this to add to it from your pillar choices in the previous rooms as well. Things like being able to spawn a boss. If you reach Horadric attunement level 3, and killing that boss gives you a big chunk of attunement. As well, there are also pillars inside of this room itself, and as a base, when you interact with them, they will create a circle around them, and defeating monsters that spawn in that circle will make a pack of elites spawn for some extra Horadric attunement as well. You can only have 1 pillar active at a time, and so for group play, you can't really like split up and take 1 pillar each or something like that, but there are also shrines of sacrifice within this room, which we'll touch on momentarily. For the pillars then, once you use it, it cannot be activated again unless you clear all of the other pillars in the room as well. If you clear all of them before filling your attunement bar, the pillars will reset and you can then start over and do them again. As for the shrines of sacrifice, these spawn in a few waves of enemies worth a chunk of Horadric attunement, and you can activate these while a pillar is active, which makes it a solid way of doubling up and being more efficient if you can take the extra challenge. Once the timer runs out or you fully fill up the attunement bar, you will spawn in a boss. Once you defeat that boss, you will get some loot dropped from the boss itself, and then also a nice chest will spawn beside them. The reward quality from the chest depends on the level of Horadric attunement that you reach during the activity. The box, when opened, is the proper main source of all Horadric spellcraft and Horadric jewel related items this season specifically. Not the currencies, but the items themselves. These chests are what drop you the catalysts and infusions when doing the seasonal questline, and the chests are also where you are supposed to get Arcana from. And once you reach Torment 1 or higher difficulty, the chests are also where you get the recipes for Horadric jewels. So they are essentially your one-stop shop for farming the hell out of the seasonal power-ups. That said, before we continue, players have noticed that the drop rate on the Arcana specifically seems to be incredibly low compared to our expectations, to the point that most people think it is either bugged, or if it isn't bugged, that it just really needs to be patched and fixed regardless. Hi, Future Cotton here. They did patch and fixes. They have upped the drop rate of Arcana within Horadric Strongrooms, along with Horadric phials as well. It's still not quite to the point that I like to see it. I feel like the Arcana should probably just be one guaranteed drop per Strongroom, and it's not quite that. It's a lot closer to that than it was. It's a lot better, and I do appreciate that they made these changes so quickly. That said, this is the way to get it. This is the activity that you want to do, and the way to maximize your chances is to fill the attunement bar, and then otherwise just do as many Strongrooms as possible. The best way to do that is to use Nightmare Sigils or Escalating Nightmare Sigils that have the guaranteed Horadric Strongroom affix on it to let you do as many Strongrooms as possible. This is a new sigil affix that was added in this season, and along with it there are also new affixes like Forgotten Wisdom that makes enemies drop bundles of XP on death, Horadric Material Reserves for general crafting materials, Horadric Gold Reserve for chests full of gold, Horadric Gem Reserve for chests containing loads of gems, which is going to be important for later, and stuff like Equipment Delve, which lets you find Horadric artifacts to actually increase the quality of the equipment that you get at the very end of the run. Basically, the more of these that you clicked during the run, the better the loot will be at the end. A final note on Strongrooms is that you can actually find 2 entrances in the same dungeon on rare occasion, but if you do, this isn't like a second Strongroom in the same dungeon, it's just another entrance to the same Strongroom. So don't get your hopes up if you see that happen. You've not gotten insanely lucky. It's just a weird thing that seems to maybe even be a bug. That said, Escalating Nightmares specifically are able to have 1 Horadric Strongroom per dungeon within the chain, so a full Escalating Nightmare run can have up to 3 Strongrooms, and doing this is generally the most efficient way to run Strongrooms on repeat, as you don't have to do any fiddling around in between the dungeons. Not to mention all the other benefits that you get from doing it too. However, if you want purely Horadric Strongrooms and none of the other stuff, you can technically get more benefit from just running pure Nightmare Sigils, as you don't have the increased difficulty from escalations or the Astaroth fight at the end either, but for overall efficiency of farming, I find the Escalating Nightmares to be quite solid. That said, let's talk about the Escalating Nightmares. These are a new sort of gauntlet of dungeons started in Season 9, but will be sticking around permanently. You do 1 dungeon in its entirety, then a portal will spawn beside you. If the person who used the original sigil interacts with the portal, you will then go to Tier 2, which is another Nightmare dungeon. This second Nightmare dungeon will have all of the affixes from the first one, but will also gain a new set of affixes added on top of that, and also just has higher enemy health and damage scaling in general to increase the challenge level. Do this again and you will get a second portal at the end of the second dungeon, and this will take you to a third, fresh Nightmare dungeon. This third Nightmare dungeon once again keeps all of the affixes from the first dungeon, it keeps all the affixes from the second dungeon, and then it also gets a new set of affixes as well added on top, and this applies to both negative and positive affixes. So the final dungeon is usually quite lucrative and rewarding, though definitely more than a bit more challenging. After you complete the third dungeon in the chain, if you are on Torment 1 difficulty or above, you will be offered 1 final portal, and this will bring you to the Astaroth boss fight, which ends the whole activity. Along the way, you can find a Horadric Strongroom in any or all of the 3 dungeons, so you can get up to 3 Strongrooms from a single escalation, which is plenty of opportunities to fish for Arcana drops. And it's important to note that the Astaroth fight itself actually drops a really solid pile of loot as well. Essentially the equivalent of a lair boss. Maybe just like a touch less, as I've had some runs where he drops only like 1 unique and just a bunch of legendaries, but other runs where it's like a massive pile of uniques and even some ancestrals and stuff like that too. So overall, the value of Escalating Nightmares is feeling quite good to me right now as a whole. That said, let's talk about the boss fight itself quickly for anyone who needs a bit of advice for it. It's not overly complex, but there are a couple of big important mechanics worth understanding. First up, he starts the fight riding on his big dog, empty his health bar, and he will jump off of the dog. At this point, the dog will teleport to the center of the room and start to heal. As the dog's health bar goes up, a circle of extremely damaging liquid will spread out on the floor. It will get bigger and bigger until the dog itself reaches full health. If you are standing in this circle for even like a second or so, you'll probably get flattened. You will take a lot of damage, so stay out of the bad stuff on the ground. Though of course that's easier said than done, because it will take up the majority of the space in the room by the time that the dog is nearly back to full health. However, when the bar fills, the circle will go away, and the dog will come back to life as essentially a second boss. It's a multi-boss fight. If you empty the dog's health bar again before you defeat Astaroth, this phase will repeat. The dog will go back to being dead, it will make the circle on the floor, it will keep growing as it heals, and so on and so forth. Personally, I find it easier to just leave the dog boss alive if you make it to that point, rather than to just be avoiding even more deadly crap on the floor, but the way that you choose to handle this mechanic in this fight is up to you. Either way, once Astaroth's proper health bar itself is empty, the fight will end. Whether the dog is alive or not, it will end. Then you get a pile of rewards. Aside from the general gear, this also includes a massive pile of the Horadric currency, which is what we use to upgrade the Horadric spells and is one of the crafting materials for the Horadric jewels as well. On that note though, let's talk about those things a little bit more. The catalysts and infusions for the spellcraft system drop quite naturally. They seem to be guaranteed to drop on your next strong room done after various seasonal questline steps. So if you are missing catalysts and infusions, continue the questline, then go do some strong rooms. As for the Arcana, this is where a lot of the randomness seems to come from, but a big tip that I have that I know will help some people out is go interact with the Horadric Focus in Saragar. 2 of the reputation track rewards on here are actually unlocks that let you find more Arcana. You simply cannot receive rare Arcana or legendary Arcana until you specifically click on these upgrades. And this means until you do this, you will have a lower Arcana drop rate in general, and it means if an Arcana does drop, it would only be a magic one unless you have collected these. So make sure you accept these rewards. On that note, the infusions drop like regular loot from the chest at the end of a strong room, meaning that they have the name of the infusion in blue if it's magic, yellow if it's a rare, or orange if it is a legendary. And because of this, a lot of players are just not realizing it when the blue or yellow Arcana drop, because they don't want to pick up blue or yellow equipment and don't realize that it is a full-on part of the power system. So that to say, if your Arcana drop rate feels weirdly low, maybe take a little bit of a closer look at what you are leaving behind before you leave a strong room, and you might find that you are missing some important drops. As for the Horadric jewels, these start to have their recipes drop from strong rooms in Torment 1 difficulty or above. They are hard to miss as they count as uniques, and once you use it, you can craft the related jewel at the crafting station. There is one guaranteed Horadric jewel recipe in the reputation track, which is the Spark of Creation Horadric jewel. The rest of them are entirely RNG drops at the end of a strong room, though generally speaking, when I have maxed out the attunement bar even in Torment 1, I have on multiple occasions had 2 separate recipes drop from a single chest. So you can collect these recipes quite quickly if you do the strong rooms properly. Past that, the actual crafting requirements for these are the seasonal currency and gem fragments. The currency itself is the same thing that you use to upgrade the powers, and it comes from a number of different sources. The main ones are, you guessed it, strong rooms, Escalating Nightmares, and especially Astaroth himself, who drops over 1,000 of the currency even on Torment 1, so if you want that currency, do Escalating Nightmares in Torment 1 and above. As for the gem fragments, there are more typical ways of farming these in the game, like doing Infernal Hordes and using the material chest inside, but there is a new Nightmare Dungeon affix as well that applies to escalations that is Horadric Gem Reserve. This allows you to find little chests while running through the dungeons that contain a pile of gem fragments when you open them. This actually is quite effective at creating gem fragments, so especially if you are already running escalations anyways for the other reasons to do so, try to look for ones that have this specific affix to gain a bunch of extra gem fragments and make it easier to craft the jewels. I was able to craft a Horadric jewel after like 4 escalations with only 2 of them having that affix, so it's really not too bad at all. And with that said, you may be wondering how to get Escalating Nightmare sigils themselves, as they are clearly very high value, at least for this season specifically. The main answer is do Horadric Strongrooms. They have a chance of dropping from the end chest of any Horadric Strongroom, and especially they have a higher chance the higher your attunement rank is. So the better the chest, the higher a chance at having this drop. It's not guaranteed, but Horadric Strongrooms are the place to go if you want these sigils. That said, you obviously can have the Horadric Strongrooms in an Escalating Nightmare, so that sort of means that Escalating Nightmares are the best place to farm Escalating Nightmare sigils. Aside from that, the Party Finder is a really effective way to get more out of your sigils, with the same concept here as doing lair bosses before the changes to them last season, where a single sigil lets 4 players do a full escalation. So if you use the Party Finder and each player has a sigil, you get to run 4 dungeons for the cost of 1 sigil per person. Pure profit. And that's pretty much it, honestly. Personally, I am quite enjoying the Escalating Nightmare system this season and all the rewards that are tied to it. The Horadric Spellcraft hasn't felt totally overpowered overpowered, but it definitely is making my build feel stronger, especially the infusion part I quite like, as not only can I adjust my elemental damage scaling by using them, but I can just do things like countering suppressor elites, which I hate dealing with, and so interacting with this system feels good. The jewels are relatively impactful, and generally less of a pain to craft than in prior seasons that have had crafted jewel components to the power system, as well as for the reward system from the strongrooms, escalations, and from Astaroth as boss. It feels pretty good to me. I might feel differently in a day or two once I have everything unlocked and the only things that drop are pure equipment and not the actual seasonal stuff anymore, but right now it feels good to run this activity, and given that it's something that will be sticking around permanently in future seasons, that can only be a good thing. That just about does it for today then, everyone. Your guide to Escalating Nightmares, Horadric Strongrooms, and how to use them to sort out your Horadric spells and Horadric jewels as quickly and easily as possible. I hope you've all enjoyed this, and hopefully it helps enhance your time with Season 9 in Diablo 4. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.